Yo ho ho, Da Mafia. Welcome to yet another edition of the Da Mafia Report. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. I have emerged from my cocoon of depression. Just kidding, to be honest with you. I'm still very, very sad. But you know what? We need to move forward. It's the offseason now for the Buffalo Bills. And we need to start looking at how we can come back even stronger than this previous year. Now, don't get me wrong. This is going to be a challenge. I'm sure you saw me tweet this out. I'm sure you've seen me say this in previous videos, but 2021 isn't too kind to us as far as cap space is concerned. Just a few short days ago, we were sitting at $2 million in available cap space, and just yesterday or the day before when we ended up sending out all those future reserve contracts, now the Buffalo Bills are sitting at a healthy negative $8 million. We are just rolling in it. Don't get me wrong, okay? Once Brandon Beane goes through the roster, he makes specific cuts. Maybe he can renegotiate with some certain players' contracts at the end of the day. He's going to be able to scoundrel up some type of money so we can not only re-sign some players that are about to hit free agency that were Buffalo Bills last year, but perhaps even bring in somebody from free agency that was on a different team as well. It's a very intriguing concept. I plan on doing a video where we're going to go through our active roster and make cuts, see if we can renegotiate contracts, and see how much money we can realistically make. But today's video is a little different, okay? What I want to do, and what I want you to put in your head before we move forward with this, let's just say, for example, that Brandon Beane was able to create a lot of cap space for us, and we're able to make this happen. So I have actually went on ahead, and I have put 3 players that I think the Buffalo Bills need to re-sign. Ladies and gentlemen, out of all of the pending free agents that were on the Buffalo Bills in 2020, these are the guys that are currently either an unrestricted free agent or a restricted free agent. Let's go through this list. Trent Murphy, Tyler Kroft, Josh Norman, Ty Nsekhe, John Feliciano, Brian Winters, Andre Roberts, Darryl Williams, Matt Barkley, Tywan Jones, TJ Yeldon, Dean Marlowe, Isaiah McKenzie, Levi Wallace, Andre Smith, Delshon Phillips, Matt Milano, Corey Bojorquez, and Ike Bodiger. That's a lot, ladies and gentlemen. That is a lot. Now, granted, the vast majority of those names, minus about 5 or 6, were mostly just role players, second, third string, more of a rotational position when it came down to the Buffalo Bills. But realistically, ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no way that we can bring back each and every single one of them. We simply just can't afford it. We really, really can't. We still need money to pay our rookies that we end up getting from the draft. We still need money to go on ahead and sort of redistribute on some of these guys that we do plan on bringing back. So without further ado, let's go on ahead and let's hop in, okay? Number 1 is going to have to be John Feliciano. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we understand that at the beginning of the year when John Feliciano was out with that shoulder injury, our offensive line had its share of struggles. Josh Allen had to continuously run outside of the pocket and extend plays. I was completely fine with that because that's what made Josh Allen great. But as far as penetration of the offensive line where John Feliciano ended up playing, it was a struggle. The second that he came back, we improved drastically. We ended up holding our own against a lot of very talented defensive lines, minus the AFC Championship that occurred last week. But he was a key player. Now, when you look at Feliciano's salary, right, in 2019, and so he brought home $2.4 million, and then in 2020, he brought back $2.6 million. Now, in my opinion, I think we could probably get him for the exact amount of money, and I think that we should realistically go on ahead and try and keep as much continuity in our offensive line as possible. And so worst case scenario, we end up drafting a guard in the draft who is more talented than Feliciano. I still want Feliciano on this team for depth purposes, and say that we don't go that route and we don't find an absolute stud in the draft, and we still have Feliciano, who has remained for the most part pretty consistent. Number 2 is going to be Darryl Williams. And so he just so happened to be a right tackle for us this year. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I think he had a very, very slept-on year. I think he did a tremendous job. He actually ended up holding some very good defensive linemen, had some pretty good games. Yes, was he a little inconsistent? For sure. He definitely was. But a couple of years back, he was considered a Pro Bowler, right? He was a former first-rounder, an absolute stud. And I think that we should bring him back. I really want to maintain consistency on this offensive line. I really, really, really do. Darryl Williams definitely needs to be a priority for us during this offseason. Last year, he just ended up signing a one-year contract, and we ended up paying him $1.3 million. We should probably be able to go on ahead and pay him the exact same amount of money because it wasn't like he was making a crazy impact on our offensive line, but he did improve it a lot, especially compared to 2019. So I think as long as we maintain our continuity of our offensive line, I think things will be okay. Last but not least, I will pound the table. I will climb to the highest peak in the United States with a giant megaphone, the biggest speakers money can buy, and scream this out loud. Matt Milano. Ladies and gentlemen, I could care less if we don't sign a single damn free agent, even the two that I just ended up mentioning before I got to Matt Milano, and if we just put all the possible allocated money we can to signing this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not a question in our minds. When Matt Milano was not on the field, we were just not the same team. Prior to the AFC Championship game, the Buffalo Bills were 12-0 when Matt Milano was playing. When Matt Milano was playing, our defense completely jived. We were good to go. We functioned like a well-oiled machine, and that's exactly how imperative that linebacker position was. In my opinion, I think Milano makes Edmonds better. When Milano's not out there, I think Edmonds is in the dark. Granted, Edmonds had that shoulder injury for a while. We really don't know. Milano, in my opinion, is the best player that we have on defense besides Trey White, I would say. We need this guy. We really, really need this guy, but the problem is that he's going to be pretty expensive. Last year, he ended up making the most money out of his entire rookie contract for $2.1 million. In 19, 18, and 17, he was right around the $500,000 mark. The problem with this is that due to his performance, according to SpotTrack.com, they are market valuing Matt Milano into making $13.1 million a year. 4-year contract extension. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a very, very interesting conversation that we need to have, right? Like I said, we're currently sitting at a sweet negative $8 million, $8 million over the cap. Really need to ask ourselves, what can Brandon Beane potentially do to trim some fat off of the regular roster and be able to get him back on this team? $13.8 million, market value 3 years, which is a total of a $41 million contract. I mean, that's pretty expensive. That's actually pretty expensive. And when you compare him to players like Miles Jack, Deion Jones, Shaq Thompson, they're all making around the same money. And I would argue that Matt Milano is legitimately making, if not more than an impact, an equal amount of impact than all three of those players I just ended up naming. So Brandon Beane is going to have to really try and trim some fat and bring back Matt Milano and still have money left over for perhaps filling some of the holes of people that we are missing out on. Backup quarterback, that's going to be interesting. Barkley's going to be out. So are we going to ride with Fromm, or are we going to see if we can test free agency for another backup moving forward? Same with Andre Roberts. And so are we going to try and re-sign him? I really don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't be upset. I mean, he's the best returner in the NFL. But who would possibly take over his position? Isaiah McKenzie? Wrong. He's a free agent as well. So, I mean, the Buffalo Bills have a lot to consider over this offseason. Do me a favor, comment, out of all those names that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, who are your top 3 that we absolutely need to re-sign? Top 3 that we need to re-sign. I really, really want to hear your thoughts on this. You can even tweet me them as well, at Real Dan Mitchell. Dom Mafia, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another edition of the Dom Mafia Report. And before I let you go, always remember, let's go Buffalo.